BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast, getting you up to speed on all the big news in the national game. It's Friday the 29th of December. I am Jonathan Sutherland, and coming up today...
And the chance for Kyogo. How on earth did that come through to him, and he scores! Kyogo for a hat, he scores! Copeland Road End at Ibrox. John Lundstrom, he shoots, beaten away by Hart. Cantwell on the rebound! And Todd Cantwell scores!
As we look ahead to the second Old Firm derby of this season, no laughing matter for some, but who cares? We'll have a special comedians preview of the match.
That's it. I'll give you your penalty, Mark.
Consolation goal at the end of the game. That would be terrible.
We'll also discuss what impact Rangers' new boy, Fabio Silva, could make at Ibrox. And...
Bear crosses in, there's Beery!
Is something going to give as the Premiership's bottom teams, Motherwell and Livingston, meet in a crucial battle at Fir Park?
This is the Scottish Football Podcast.
I am delighted to say we are joined today by the Times Scottish football correspondent, Michael Grant. Good morning to you, Michael. I heard you limbering up on Good Morning Scotland with Philip Goodlad earlier today. I hope you saved your best material for us, though.
Well, clearly I did, Jonathan. I like the idea of this being billed as a comedy special, and here's Michael Grant from the Times.
I can't wait for the Christmas cracker gags to be unveiled later from you, Michael. Fantastic to have you. As I said, it is going to be a comedy special today. We have Celtic fan and comedian Marc Jennings and Rosco McClelland, who's a Rangers fan. And Marc, if I can start with you, the Old Firm derby, is it ripe comedy material or best left alone?
Well, I believe that the Glasgow derby is no laughing matter. And
I hear you,
yes.
loud and clear.
I think that it's. I think that's a big part of it, isn't it? It's a banter. It's like, you know, and I think obviously it can go too far sometimes, but I feel like that's a big part of the appeal. Is it's just that with any rivalry, particularly Celtic Rangers, it's just, you know, that's part of the sort of bragging rights, and it's going into work in the Monday morning and, you know, being able to slag off your pal that supports the other team if you win and vice versa. So I think it comes part and parcel with Celtic Rangers for sure.
Rosco McClelland, I was surfing social media this morning and I saw a quote from Delia Smith, no less, talking about football, saying, "First and foremost, it's a beautiful game. It's irritating. It's disappointing. You have pain. You have ecstasy." Surely, Roscoe, the perfect ingredients for comedy.
That is absolutely right. I've had a lot of all of them in my time. But listen, I'm looking for it. Like, it's not been easy. It's not been easy watching these Old Firm games. That's right, the Old Firm. It's still a thing. The last few years, but I think, I can feel a turn coming on. You know, as soon as I saw Santa getting booed, I thought, this is it, man. The times they are a-changing.
It is all set up. Plenty to get through with the guys. But first, let's quickly run through today's Scottish football headlines. Everything is perfect. That's the quote from Rangers signing Fabio Silva after the highly rated Portugal under-21 international sealed a loan move to Ibrox from Wolves for the rest of the season. It's a huge night in the Championship where second plays third as Dundee United host Partick Thistle. 6 points separate the sides, with United 5 points behind leaders Wraith Rovers. The game is live on the BBC Scotland TV channel from 7:30. Join me then. Aberdeen boss Barry Robson said his side face a fixture backlog after their game with Motherwell was called off on Wednesday due to Storm Gerrit. Meanwhile, Stuart Kettlewell has revealed that half his Motherwell squad were left feeling seasick as high winds shook their team bus as they travelled north before the match was abandoned. He was speaking ahead of the Steelmen's crucial clash with Livingston this weekend, defeat in which would leave either team feeling queasy as they look up the league table. Right, Marc and Roscoe, no doubt sick with nerves right now with Celtic versus Rangers tomorrow. But before we get to that, let's quickly talk about this Fabio Silva. £35 million Wolves paid Porto for him. He's 21 years old, had a couple of loan spells at Anderlecht and PSV. Now he's going to be joining Rangers in January. Rosco, are you excited by this signing?
I am, actually. I can see the terror in Marc's eyes as well as he thinks about the prospect. Listen, we've all had a wee look at YouTube videos and his record, and it doesn't look great, it doesn't sound great, but I tell you what does sound great, his name, and I think that's half the battle up here, right? A player with two good names, Fabio and Silva, he's going to make us seem a lot better straight away.
Michael Grant, if I can come to you, he's obviously highly rated, or was highly rated at Porto. Hasn't quite happened at Wolverhampton Wanderers. A couple of, I suppose, quite productive loan spells at Anderlecht and PSV, but I suppose a tad unproven in terms of reaping goal rewards. What do you make of it? And also, how does it sit with you in terms of like all this speculation? There's obviously the whole Lawrence Shankland narrative going on in the background. He's been linked with Rangers too.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a bit of a kind of quick fix in a sense that it's only until the end of the season. I don't think there's really any suggestion that that he would be staying for longer than that. So this isn't Clement team building or squad building as such. It's really kind of taking care of an issue that has arisen because of Danilo's injury, the fact that Dessers are still pretty unconvincing for most people. Rangers have been crying out for presence in their front line this season, and whether Silva's the man or not, we don't know. I mean, he certainly came to Wolves with a big reputation from Portugal. It hasn't worked out for him in England, although, as you said, Jonathan, his two loans were quite respectable last season at Anderlecht and PSV, and the level of clubs that seemed to be interested in taking him away from Wolves, Ajax, Leverkusen, Villarreal, PSG themselves, apparently. I think that would be encouraging for Rangers supporters that the guy might offer something, but you don't know. I mean, we've seen guys come from the Premier League with big reputations, young lads, and they often struggle in Scottish football. It's fast and aggressive, and they don't get any time on the ball. So it will be interesting. But look, I imagine he'll chip in with some goals because Rangers will give him good service.
Rosco, I've got to give you the final word. I mean, Rangers signings been a bit of a mixed bag of late. Obviously, successes like Jack Butland, Abdallah Sima as well. But Danilo's had his injury problems, and obviously there's been certainly mixed views, I think, to put it mildly, about Cyril Dessers and Sam Lammers.
I'm turning around on Dessers. I actually, I'm starting to think he's figured it out, and some of the runs he makes into space are fantastic. Lammers, the thing about Lammers is sometimes he feels like he's one half of a pantomime horse, you know. Occasionally he'll be the front end and you're like, oh, that looks fine, but most of the time you're seeing just the back end and you're like, why have we got this out there?
Right, let's forget about Fabio Silva for a bit because he's not actually eligible for the big one tomorrow. Celtic versus Rangers, 12:30 kickoff at Parkhead. Rangers currently 5 points behind Celtic, but with 2 games in hand on their rivals. Michael Grant, the title will not be won or lost tomorrow, but just how significant do you feel tomorrow's result will be in the final equation?
Well, it depends if there's a win. I mean, I think if there's a draw, it's not particularly significant. I think if either side wins, it's a big, big statement. You know, if Rangers win, there's even more momentum behind Clement, who's been almost flawless so far since he came in, you know, and there's a growing kind of swelling belief amongst the Rangers supporters in what Clement's going to bring them. And listen, that's only going to be multiplied tomorrow if they win at Parkhead. On the other hand, if they lose, you know, there'll be echoes of Michael Beale, who made a fantastic start at Rangers and then eventually ran aground against Celtic. So that's going to be fascinating. And also from the Brendan Rodgers dynamic, you know, you saw how kind of febrile Parkhead was a couple of weeks ago when they lost to Hearts. You know, I think, you know, Marc will tell us, but it seems to me that the Celtic support could be quite quick to turn on the board and maybe Rodgers and some of the players if it goes bad and tomorrow and that's another thing that's intriguing about the kind of home fans only element of the derby. You know, if there isn't that focus and the kind of distraction of the away support to focus on and say Rangers score first, the anger from the Celtic support is going to be visceral, and it'll be kind of, there's no kind of distraction from it, if you know what I mean. So that's all interesting. It's a difficult one to call, John. I think it really is a difficult Old Firm game to call because the margin's pretty tight here.
Let's get the fans' views. Marc, Jennings, Celtic fan. What gives you most confidence about the match tomorrow, and what are you most concerned about?
I think the thing that gives me confidence going in is just Brendan Rodgers, because effectively, like, this is the kind of game that he's going to earn his crust. Like, he came back, he's a winner. He says he knows how to win. He came back to try and get more success in Europe, and obviously he's got a great track record against Rangers. So tomorrow, we've not been playing well. Even Rodgers himself said the other week in a press conference that there's been a strange sort of feeling around Celtic all year. It has been a strange season. The football's not been great compared to what we were used to under Ange the last couple of years. And obviously the results a couple of weeks ago, 2 losses in a row, weren't great. But I think I've got faith in Brendan that he can turn it round if he can get a performance out of the players. The problem is, I think, and it has been all season, it's just that you don't really know what Celtic are going to turn up. And even the players that were great last year and all that, they just, like Kyogo, for example, is the main one, obviously, where he's been such a brilliant player for us. But, I mean, if we signed him this season, there would maybe be a lot of Celtic fans who think he's just not good enough. But we know he is because of how brilliant he's been. But it's just under the system with Rodgers and just this season in general, he's not been getting the goals. So but I think but Rodgers is a big game manager. My concern would be that basically we just don't step up our game and play the same way that we've been playing in recent weeks. One thing I would say, though, is the encouragement I get is from the European performances, because even though we finished bottom of the group, we did hold our own in most of the games. Atletico at home, particularly, getting a draw and obviously beat Feyenoord. And I think if Rangers try and play against us, and I think if they're a bit overconfident going in with their recent run of form, I think if we can actually play against a team who's not just sitting with 10 men behind the ball, that might work in an advantage, because I think the slower pace that Rodgers plays, sometimes it's harder to break down those teams. But if Rangers come at Celtic, I think that could actually work in our favour.
Rosco, you must be more confident going into this derby as a Rangers fan than you have been for a while. Philippe Clement still undefeated as Rangers manager. Do you think that will continue tomorrow?
I think it will. I'd be very happy with a draw. I'd be very happy with a draw. But I mean, some of the teams, I mean, Marc's saying that it would be good for Celtic if we come out and play. But the teams we've been able to come out and play against properly, like that have actually tried to match us, like Betis, and we should never have beat them, and we did. Like 3-2 is not a fluke. 3-2 is not a jammy result. That is we've came to your patch and we've just beat you fair and square. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good game. That means that we have got our injuries, but I'm happy to have Jack Butland. That's what I'm most happy for.
You think you'll be a busy Jack Butland tomorrow?
Do you know, I reckon you'll have a couple of good saves to make. You'll have a couple of good saves to make. I think the way Celtic are going to play, it's not going to be the same as the last few Old Firms.
And you've mentioned you've kind of come round to Cyril Dessers. Man of the match tomorrow?
Either man of the match or pantomime villain. I just can't figure out what the man's going to do. But I love that. You have to have light and shade, and he brings both of them in equal amounts. Sometimes he'll round the keeper and put it in the net, and sometimes he'll try and kick the ball, and he's taking a fresh air swipe. And I love that.
Marc, in terms of Celtic fans overall, Obviously tomorrow's massive. But is there a sense that this is still, I suppose, the remains of essentially Ange Postecoglou's team that Brendan Rodgers has inherited? And are you all waiting for, I guess, the club to unleash the funds for Brendan to put his stamp on things?
Absolutely. Like, it does sort of feel as though Brendan's come back as like the sort of stepdad to Ange's team. And it's weird because he's obviously been there since the start of the season, but it does almost feel as though he's there as a caretaker manager at the moment, because it is basically Ange's team. And like Michael said, and I think this is important, we did lose Jota, we've not had Tatati in the team, we've not had the Bada, and they've been big players for Ange. So I think that is what we're waiting on. And I think regardless of what happens tomorrow, And even with January, again, with the amount of players that we have got in the squad at the moment, I think it's like a case of just getting through this season, even giving Rodgers the whole summer next year before you can really start to judge him and have his own team. It's a shame that it's not came together more quickly, but I think ultimately, we know Rodgers' pedigree and stuff, so regardless of what happens for the rest of the season, I think we've got to give him time, and we've just got to hope that the board back him and get the players in that are going to work in his system and that are of the quality that he thinks can do a job for Celtic.
Celtic fan Mark, quick scoreline prediction?
I think that Celtic are going to finally break the duck on Rangers mysteriously not getting a penalty for the last 400 years, and it'll be 1-0 Celtic penalty, given away by Tavernier.
Rangers fan Rosco?
3-1 Rangers. That's it. I'll give you your penalty, Mark.
Consolation goal at the end of the game. That would be terrible.
And Aberdeen fan Mike?
2-0 Aberdeen. Or are we still talking about Celtic and Rangers? Listen, this is hell of a boring, but I do mean it because I think it could be a draw, because it has the feel to me of a low-scoring game. I don't think either team is particularly strong this season by their own standards, So I think it's fine margins, and it wouldn't surprise me a 1-0 either way, but I also could see a 0-0 or a 1-8.
Promises to be utterly intriguing as always.
You're listening to the Scottish Football Podcast.
Just quickly before we go, the Old Firm isn't the only big game in the Premiership tomorrow. Aberdeen take on St Mirren at Pittodrie. Hearts host Ross County. Dundee travel to Kilmarnock. And at Fir Park, it is the basement battle between Motherwell and Livingston. We've got to talk about that game first. Michael Grant, 11 games without a win for Livy, 15 without a win for Motherwell. It's absolutely huge, isn't it? I guess it's, you have to talk about the managers as well. David Martindale and Stuart Kettlewell, both impressive, articulate, really open and honest in their own ways. But this does feel like a pivotal moment.
It does, and this is going to sound cruel, but I hope that neither of them win tomorrow. I really hope this is a draw, and us in the media can still keep writing about these winless runs that they both have, because I know it sounds a bit vulturish, but it is interesting to see how far it'll go. I mean, Motherwell, no wins in 15. I mean, I'm being flippant because it'll be pretty horrible around both clubs at the moment. Around the staff and the players and everybody at the club. You're under such a cloud when you go so long without winning. Listen, one of them probably will win tomorrow, and suddenly, the sky's part and the sun comes through and everybody feels better about themselves. But if there's another loser tomorrow, it's really bleak. And that's all of that is apart from the relegation issue, which of course they're the bottom two at the moment and in danger of just drifting away.
Livingston's last victory was in October. It came against Motherwell, incidentally, a 2-0 victory. Lennon Miller was sent off for Motherwell that day. Marc, Rosco, I know you've got other things to keep you entertained tomorrow, but does any of that register on your radars?
I think Hearts are the one to look out for. Obviously, beat Celtic the other week and then had a good one against Hibs during the week. So I think, obviously, at home to Ross County, if they can sort of secure third place and just kind of keep a strong run going. I know Stephen Naismith got a lot of criticism from the Hearts fans not too recently, and now they seem to be warming to him. Obviously, the results have turned around, so it'll be interesting to see if they can keep that up.
Time to wrap things up on the Scottish Football Podcast. My thanks to Michael Grant, Marc Jennings and Rosco McClelland, and thank you for listening as well. Remember, the big one in the Championship, Dundee United versus Partick Thistle. It's live on Sports Scene. Join us at 7:30 on the BBC Scotland channel tonight. Sports Sound on BBC Radio Scotland with full live coverage of Celtic versus Rangers and all the weekend's games. And Sports Scene will have the highlights on Saturday evening. Keep your emails coming on any subject at all. scottishfootball@bbc.co.uk. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe and follow the Scottish Football Podcast so you don't miss an episode. Scottish Football, the gift that keeps on giving. Thanks for listening.
Hi,
it's Amy Irons here. I just wanted to tell you that Sacked in the Morning is back for a new series. We are your survival guide to football management. If you want to hear exactly what goes on in the dugouts and dressing rooms across the world, then we are the pod for you. And as ever, I'll be joined by former Scotland gaffer Craig Levine and some of football's best managers to provide all the insight you could possibly need. And you can find it on BBC Sounds. Just search for Sacked in the Morning.